You've always been such a failure. That was my sister, dripping with sarcasm, even though it had been a while since we last met. We had agreed to meet at a cafe, an unusual invitation from my sister who never really liked me. As soon as our coffee arrived, she said that to me. I was taken aback by her sudden harsh words, but then I remembered, she was always like this. My sister, although a bit harsh-looking, was always the more attractive one, skillful in everything she did. In contrast, I was just average in looks and build. Growing up, people often didn't even realize we were sisters. I guess I've always been a nuisance to her. Whenever I made a small mistake, she'd seemingly kindly correct me, but always with a sense of superiority, uttering that phrase. After I got married, my sister and I grew distant, and it's been a while since I've been spoken to in such a manner. I was feeling quite down about it when, out of the blue, she blurted out something shocking. "I'm pregnant with your husband's child, so you should divorce quickly." With a flourish, she showed me a photo, likely taken on a hotel bed, of the two of them. It seemed like she took the picture while my husband was sleeping. He was lying next to her, mouth wide open, fast asleep. I could feel the blood drain from my face as the reality of what she said hit me. I noticed my hand shaking, barely able to place my coffee cup back on the saucer. Wondering how long I had been betrayed. As my expression turned grim, my sister, with a sense of superiority, said as if it were the most natural thing in the world and laughed. I muttered under my breath. "Who's really the failure here?" "My name is Emily, I'm 34 years old. I married my boss, who is 3 years older than me, a few years ago. Both my husband and I had wanted children for a long time, but after visiting a clinic 6 months ago, I found out that I had fertility issues. I had many consultations with the doctors and started fertility treatments, but to no avail. One day, I decided to talk to my husband about it. "Hey, the doctor wants you to get tested as well," I suggested timidly. He replied mockingly. "Why should I get tested when it's your fault we can't have a kid?" Despite my explanations that his cooperation was essential for the treatment, he flatly refused to get tested. There's only so much I could do alone, but he never accompanied me to the hospital. The leadership qualities he displayed as my boss were nothing but arrogance at home. Eventually, my husband stopped being supportive of me as I struggled with the fertility treatments. "You can't even have kids, at least get dinner ready when I come home. Can't you at least take out the trash? You can't even do the housework properly." He started saying things like this every chance he got. I was exhausted from the repeated tests and treatments, and he began treating me more like a housekeeper than his wife. I was on the verge of breaking down. My husband was possibly up for a promotion and had been coming home late due to work and entertaining clients. One day, I received a call from my sister. "Hey Emily, do you want to have coffee this Sunday?" I've never been fond of my sister. Whenever I made a mistake, she'd sarcastically say, "You're such a failure," while covering for me. Everyone around us praised her as a great sister, and it wasn't like she ever hurt me physically. But I couldn't stand her condescending attitude, as if she was always the superior one. Whether she knew about my feelings or not, we had become somewhat estranged since I got married, but then she invited me for coffee. I was hesitant to meet her, but exhausted from the fertility treatments and my husband's attitude, I thought it might be a refreshing change. "It's been a while, how have you been?" I asked my sister, who had become more flashy than before, as I sipped the coffee I ordered. She was wearing a dress with a deeply plunging neckline and bright red lipstick. Considering she's 39, it might seem a bit too flashy, but it suited her striking features well. She immediately responded to my question. "Emily, I heard you're going through fertility treatments," she asked abruptly with a snort. I couldn't believe my ears. It wasn't just her brash question that surprised me. We weren't close, and I hadn't told anyone in our family about the treatments. How did she know? Seemingly delighted by my confusion, she laughed softly. "A body that can't have children is like a defective product, isn't it? No wonder he prefers me." "What?" I took a moment to process her words, said with a sly grin and resting her cheek on her hand. "You still don't get it? You've always been such a failure. Right now, there's a baby in my belly. And the father, of course, is your dear husband." Her bright red lips slowly moved. "What is she saying, this sister of mine? A baby? With my husband and my sister? I'm pregnant with your husband's child, so you should divorce quickly." She smugly showed me a photo, probably taken on a hotel bed, fluttering it in front of me. My husband, sleeping next to her with his mouth wide open, seemed unaware of being photographed. How long had their relationship been so intimate that he could relax like this around her? The reality of what she revealed drained the color from my face. I realized my hand was trembling, barely able to set the coffee cup back on its saucer. How long had I been betrayed? As my face hardened, contrasting with my suddenly triumphant sister who casually threw out her words, her laughter, a bit shrill, echoed in my ears. I returned home in a daze, not remembering how I got there. Next thing I knew, I was in my living room, clutching the crumpled photo she had proudly handed over. Why? How long? Such thoughts kept coming and going. I had wanted children so badly. No matter how harshly he treated me, I held on to the hope that he would understand, that someday he would cooperate. But they betrayed me, as if mocking my feelings. What's this, sitting in the dark? Suddenly, the lights came on, and I looked up startled. Hey, isn't dinner ready yet? My husband began to grumble as usual, undressing from his suit. I thrust the crumpled photo at him. What's this? Why do you have this? He realized it was a photo with my sister and tried to snatch it away, but I quickly hid it behind my back. This photo was crucial evidence. I couldn't let him take it so easily. What's this about? Having an affair with my own sister? I asked, barely containing my anger. He seemed a bit taken aback, but then blustered loudly as if trying to cover up his guilt. Shut up. It's all your fault. You're infertile, you're always too tired from treatment to do any housework. I want kids, your sister is far more attractive. Hearing him spit out these words, I felt something snap inside me. My husband, who wanted children but refused to help with fertility treatments. My husband, who used my infertility as an excuse to dump all the housework on me. But most of all, I couldn't forgive him for having an affair with my sister. So you admit it, the affair? I asked for confirmation. He replied, as dismissive as ever. Yeah, I admit it. Divorce or whatever, I'll do it. You're defective product. Defective product. So those were his words, echoed by my sister. As I stood there stunned, he paused as if realizing the gravity of his words, but then definitely spat out. Fine, I'll pay alimony or whatever. And so, we got divorced. Fortunately, I had proof of the affair, and my lawyer was excellent, so both my sister and husband paid the alimony without much fuss. However, it seemed to irk my sister to pay me, as she called me, sounding pleased, to announce that she was going to marry my husband. Emily, you really are hopeless. I'll be the one to find happiness in your place. I couldn't stand her sticky voice lingering in my ear, so I hung up and immediately blocked the number, along with my husband's. I should have done this much earlier. Why did I have to endure such treatment? What had I ever done to my sister? The screen of my smartphone blurred with tears before fading to black. A year after cutting ties with my husband and sister, I moved a bit farther from where I used to live and changed jobs. Just as I was beginning to find some stability, it rained that day. I realized I was almost out of my usual tea, so I decided to go shopping at the supermarket for a change of scenery. Excuse me, have you seen my dog? It's a dachshund puppy. Near the entrance, an elderly woman was calling out. She explained that her puppy, which she had tied near the entrance, was missing. The leash was still there, so her husband, who came shopping with her, suggested someone might have taken it. What a cruel world, stealing a puppy. I hoped it would be found safe as I finished my shopping. Remembering the photo she showed me of the distinctive dachshund, I decided to take a detour to the park, thinking maybe someone had taken the puppy there. As I stepped into the park, thinking I might find someone with the puppy, I heard a voice. What a good little one. When I heard a familiar voice, I turned around to see someone with a stylish umbrella, gently patting a child's back. The person's flamboyant and eye-catching outfit immediately told me it was my sister. Oh no, I can't believe I've run into her here. I thought, hurriedly hiding behind a nearby tree. I could have just walked away, but something made me curious, so I peeked at my sister from behind the tree. There she was, walking slowly and talking to a child in a pink raincoat cradled in her arms. Has she grown so much already? I found myself unconsciously rubbing my own stomach, a reminder of my unfulfilled desire. But then, a chill ran down my spine. The face that peeked out from my sister's embrace was not a child's, not even human. It was a dog. My sister was holding a small dog. talking to it as if it were her child. "What would you like for dinner today?" A cold sweat ran down my back as I watched her. I realized something as I stared in disbelief. The dog in my sister's arms, a dachshund, looked exactly like the one in the photo I had just seen. Even though it wore a mask to prevent biting, I could see the distinctive dappled pattern through the gaps in its raincoat. The puppy, trembling and desperately trying to wiggle free, was skillfully restrained by my sister using her arms, stomach, and knees. "Hello?" I decided to call the police without hesitation. I regretted not asking the dog's owner for their contact information, but it was too late for that now. I couldn't just leave things as they were, and I knew approaching my sister directly wouldn't help. I stayed hidden behind the tree, explaining the situation to the police over the phone. Once I saw the officers arrive and start questioning my sister, I left the scene. That night, I received a call from my mother telling me that my sister had been arrested. Since my sister's affair and remarriage with my ex-husband, my mother had been considerate of me, and this was the first time she had called me about my sister since then. Apparently, the dappled dachshund was safely returned to its owner. I felt a sense of relief, but couldn't bring myself to tell my mother that I was the one who reported it. Then, she started crying on the other end of the line. "Emily, actually, your sister's pregnancy, it was a lie." My mother's voice was filled with sobs as she revealed the shocking news. A few months ago, my ex-husband had called my mother in a hurry. When she arrived, she found him yelling at my visibly upset sister. After calming him down, he explained, red-faced and agitated. My sister's belly, which never seemed to grow, and the doctor she never seemed to visit raised his suspicions. When he finally confronted her, she confessed that her pregnancy was a lie. "The ultrasound picture your sister gave me before the wedding was bought from an app." That might have been bearable. It would have been one thing if it were just a lie about being pregnant. But there was more to my sister's deceit. My ex-husband, fed up with her evasions, had taken her to the hospital, only to discover a shocking truth. Just like me, my sister had difficulty conceiving, made even more challenging by her age. My ex-husband, furious, threatened to sue her for fraud and demand alimony, and they were discussing it with lawyers when this latest incident occurred. "Your sister's been acting strangely, and I don't know what to do anymore. Let her deal with it herself. It's none of my business now," I replied coldly, without the strength to comfort my crying mother. I hung up, feeling a bit harsh but knowing that I deserved to cry too. It was supposed to be a simple trip to buy tea, yet I had stumbled upon this unexpected truth. I wondered if my sister had known all along that she couldn't have children. Even before she demanded that I leave my husband. Maybe all she wanted was to take him away from me. That's just how she always was. "Emily, you're such a failure." That was her constant refrain. Reveling in her sense of superiority. Perhaps she couldn't stand that I, whom she deemed inferior, had married before her. That was the kind of person she was. Who's really the failure here? I whispered to myself, knowing I would probably never speak to my sister again. After being arrested by the police for pet theft, my sister, who had been exhibiting odd behavior, was apparently ordered to undergo a psychiatric evaluation. I remember my mother mentioning that my sister had been acting strangely. But it turns out, it was all part of my sister's scheme. When I demanded alimony from her, my ex-husband, it seems, had paid her share as well. After remarrying, my sister, who had been enjoying her life as a housewife without a steady job, had no savings. Incredibly, she committed this crime simply to avoid paying the alimony. She wanted to be deemed financially incapable after a psychiatric evaluation. However, neither the police nor the doctors were that naive. My sister's half-baked scheme, hardly a scheme, was quickly exposed, and she was judged to have committed a premeditated, extremely malicious act. Recently, I heard from my exhausted mother that my sister had received a prison sentence and would spend the next few years behind bars. As for my ex-husband, he apparently hadn't learned his lesson and continued his affairs, even after learning of my sister's infertility. Not just with one, but multiple women. Yet none of them became pregnant with his child, which finally led him to get tested. Astonishingly, it turned out that he himself was infertile. I thought so. While it was difficult for me to get pregnant, it wasn't impossible. If only my ex-husband had cooperated, there were still ways we could have tried. But he never wanted to find out. He probably thought that just having intercourse was enough to conceive a child, never considering that he might be the issue. When told by doctors that he was incapable of fathering a child, his male pride was shattered. Stress from his errors at work, compounded by this shock, led to his promotion being withdrawn. He even resorted to embezzling company funds as a way to cope with his stress. I feel ashamed that I ever had feelings for such a foolish man. His embezzlement was discovered, and he was, of course, fired from his job. To make matters worse, it turned out that one of his affair partners was married. He faced hefty demands for alimony and, unable to cope, had to move back into his parents' home. Why do I know all this? Because my ex-husband, having changed his number, called me the number he hadn't blocked yet. Regretfully, I answered, and against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him one last time. That's how I learned all this. In front of me sat a man who bore no resemblance to the leader he once was. He wore a wrinkled shirt, his hair was thinning from stress, and he nervously laughed and talked non-stop. My parents, they're nagging me to show them a grandchild. I'm sure, with his pride, he hasn't even told his parents about his infertility. His parents were always persistent about wanting grandchildren, probably even more so since his marriage to my sister. He seemed more distressed than ever. As I made it clear with my eyes that I had no interest in his life story, he swallowed hard. Even now, his high pride lingered, and it took him a few seconds to spit out his next words.
Hey, could you lend me some money? I mean, you must still have some savings, right?
His audacious request made me feel nauseous. I feel nauseated by my ex-husband who, without offering an apology, begs me like this. How could he think I would lend him money?
I was just borrowing a little from the company, and they fired me, Job hunting isn't going well either.
Just borrowing a little? I couldn't hide my astonishment. Didn't he realize embezzlement is a serious crime? Despite likely dealing with the police and facing lawsuits from his company, how could he remain so optimistic? Probably, his unsuccessful job hunt was due to his crime being well known. My ex-husband, claiming to be working day-to-day jobs to pay off his alimony, just kept laughing without a hint of remorse. Why on earth does he think I owe him the courtesy of lending him the alimony he paid me? I sighed deeply. Misinterpreting this, my ex-husband began to get excited.
You're going to lend me the money. I knew I could count on you, Emily,
he exclaimed. I firmly told him. I'm going abroad.
Huh?
He said, his mouth agape, not understanding.
I'm planning to help impoverished children become self-sufficient.
Ever since I realized I couldn't have children of my own, I had been slowly planning this. I always loved children. Every time I saw a child in town, I felt it. So I decided to help needy children somewhere in the world and thought about moving overseas. Despite my hesitation about language barriers, this man's presence pushed me to make the decision. I might even thank him for that.
So no, I don't have a single penny to lend someone like you.
I thought about booking my plane ticket as I turned to leave. Perhaps I had hoped, somewhere deep inside, that my ex-husband might apologize. That never happened.
Wait, Emily! What do you mean by abroad? Wait for me. I only need a little money, please lend it to me.
I heard his shouts behind me but ignored them. I don't have time to waste on such things in my life ahead.